If you're new to sobriety, you're not alone. We've all gone through those challenges. We're all facing challenges, and for me one of the biggest was simply getting a good night's sleep. During those first few tentative steps in my new life, it was bad, you know, tossing and turning, feeling wired. It was a real pain in the arse, but in the journey, as in life, a little perseverance and patience goes a long way. So I'm a decade alcohol free, and in today's video I want to share with you 3 crucial tips that are going to help you quickly get the best out of your sober life. Okay, let's go. Now, if you're new to the channel, I stopped drinking alcohol over a decade ago. The more I teach about stopping drinking alcohol, the more similarities there are in the journey to me. Right? I used to think it was just in the beginning that I can see patterns, but you know, it's all throughout this thing. It's patterns repeating themselves with shades of difference depending on the person, right? But we're all human. We all want the same things when you break it down. So it's just a question of perspective on how you see these things. Reality is the same. It doesn't change. It is what it is, right? It's the only thing that changes is the way we interpret these things, and that's where the trouble lies, I think. It's also where the magic lies. And speaking of lying, let's get back to the topic on hand and getting a good night's sleep. As I said in the beginning of this video, one of the biggest challenges in the first few days was not sleeping at all well for me. I felt wired most of the time, especially the first few days. It was like I drank a couple of strong cups of coffee just before I went to bed. It's a real pain in the arse, right? You get into bed expecting to fall asleep, and you just end up lying there staring at the ceiling. You're tossing and turning, maybe falling asleep for a few minutes, and then you're back wide awake again. So I always read before I go to sleep. I have done since I was a little kid. When I was a drinker, especially when I was drunk, I'd still try to read, but I'd never get past more than a few lines at a time, and I'd be unconscious by the time I got past that. I'll go back to the same book the next evening, but I could never remember what I'd read the day before, so it was probably a waste of time. Now, in those first few days, reading a book would help. It would help me make me drowsy. My eyes would get heavy. I'd go through the motions of falling asleep, but as soon as I put the book down, turned the light off, it was like a switch flicked inside of my head, and I'd be wide awake again. It's not good for the head, that kind of thing, when you're trying and you just can't get something done. So look, it is what it is. It took me about a month before I had any consistency, and that's the key, right? Consistent sleep patterns, that's what you're looking for here. Now, over that first month, my sleep gradually improved. I changed some of the things about what I was doing. I experimented with some things, but at the end of the day, sometimes all you can do is to accept the inevitable, right? I was committed to staying on this journey, so I had to accept that any big change that I was going to make in my life, it was going to bring some upset, it was going to bring some agitation, and let's just say some moments that were tougher to handle than others. Now, that's my first tip, is just to accept that with any change there's going to be discomfort. You don't have to like the situation, you don't have to be happy about it. That's not the aim of what we're doing here. Long term, yes, you want to be happy, you want to be contented, but in the short term, the only aim is that you stay away from the poison, right? So sometimes all you can do is just put up with the upset, put up with the agitation, and put up with feeling tired and even grumpy the next day, right? You can turn up the dial in your head, amplifying the agitation as much as you want. You can also turn down the volume, mostly through your own acceptance. You're aiming at something bigger than just a few grumpy days, and you're only going to get to that goal if you persevere, right? So keep it in front of your mind. Whatever happens is supposed to happen. It's part of the change, the adaptation, the physical and the mental change. It's part of that discomfort zone. Such a lovely day today. It was cold earlier. Now, there's certain things that you can physically do. We'll get into that in a minute, but there's a huge mental aspect to this. The more you try to force sleep to happen, the more you're putting yourself into, the more likely you are to put yourself into that agitated state. So the less likely sleep is going to be. So you need to get past that. It's a stage, it's a dynamic part of the process. It is what it is. And before we move on, I've built a beginner's course, including a personalized plan to help you get through some of these things, down in the link below. All right, so second point, second tip is just to do something. This is a simple one. You know, don't just lay there, get up and move around. If I can't sleep, I'll read a book on my Kindle. The light's turned down low. If that doesn't work, I'll get up for a while. It's a bit more difficult with the dogs around these days. You know, they think that whatever time I get up after a few hours sleep, that it's time for their breakfast. So that's a bit mad, but it is what it is. Number 3, long term, you've got to think about new habits, new routines. The habits are programs in your unconscious mind that they're following, so it can take a while to get rid of those, and they're not easy. You have to wear them down. So we have to adapt to the new state and get rid of the old, right? So before you can get the normal life back, the old gets pushed back into the background, and eventually it loses any form of control. So remember, stop the flow, do the work, move on. And this is all part of doing that long-term work. Figure out what you have to do to help you to sleep, to get into bed, and figure out what you have to do, what you have to eliminate, so that the things that are keeping you from sleeping. So there you have it, my 3 tips for helping you to get to sleep. Sometimes you have no choice to accept what's going on. The change has to be allowed to happen, especially with something like sleep, something that's so inbuilt. In the long term, you're going to build new routines for bedtime, and the more you can do of that in the early stages, consciously to put these things into place, the quicker those routines will be established, right? So in the meantime, go with the flow and be as proactive as you can be. So take care of yourself. Click on the link for the course down below. Onwards and upwards. Bye now.